Let me hit you with a question that might sting a little. When you were a kid, did anyone ever sit you down and say, "Here's how to make money work for you"? Not just get a job or save your allowance, but how to build wealth from scratch, like a blueprint. If your answer is no, don't worry, you're not alone. That silence you heard growing up, that was by design. Because while most families teach their kids how to get by, the wealthy teach their kids how to get ahead. And Robert Kiyosaki, he's been exposing that gap for decades. In Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Kiyosaki didn't just write a book. He detonated a truth bomb that shook generations awake. He pulled the curtain back on two very different financial educations. One from his real father, the well-meaning, college-educated employee. The other, his rich dad, an entrepreneur who saw money as a tool, not a trap. Same world, same economy, same opportunities. Two wildly different outcomes. Why? Because the rich teach their kids things the poor and middle class never hear. They talk about assets, not allowances. They show them how to think, not just what to do. They hand down systems, strategies, and mindsets, not just paychecks. And today, you're going to learn exactly what those lessons are. We're going deep, no fluff, no theory. Just real-world, battle-tested principles that can change your life if you apply them. Ready? Let's get to class. You grow up thinking school will prepare you for life. You sit through years of math, history, biology, memorizing facts, passing tests, following rules. But when the real world hits and the bills start stacking, there's no class on what actually matters: how to make money, how to manage it, how to grow it, how to keep it. You can solve for X, but not for financial freedom. And that's not an accident. That's design. In 1943, the Rockefeller Foundation reportedly funded efforts to remove financial education from public school curriculums. Why? Because a population that understands money is harder to control. The system wasn't built to raise entrepreneurs. It was built to manufacture employees. People who follow instructions, depend on paychecks, fear debt, and never ask why they're stuck working 40 hours a week just to be broke by Friday. Robert Kiyosaki's rich dad saw through it all. He knew schools weren't going to teach money, so he taught it at home. While most kids were told to get good grades so they could get a safe job, Robert was learning about assets, cash flow, and business systems. While his friends learned to fear failure, he was taught to expect it and learn from it. Rich Dad understood the most dangerous thing you could do was rely on a system designed to keep you average. The rich pass down knowledge that never makes it into a textbook. They teach strategy, mindset, confidence, risk. They talk about real estate, tax law, leverage, and ownership. Meanwhile, most families pass down silence, confusion, fear, and that silence becomes generational. So if you're just now realizing that no one taught you how money works, it's not your fault. But it is your responsibility to change it. Because once you see the game for what it is, you don't have to play the role they wrote for you. You can rewrite the rules, for yourself and for the next generation. Poor Dad said, "Get a job." Rich Dad said, "Build a system." That's the difference between survival and wealth. Most people are trained from childhood to work for money, to trade their time for a paycheck. It's a trap dressed up as stability. You clock in, clock out, and hope there's something left at the end of the month after taxes, rent, and groceries. But the moment you stop working, the money stops too. It's a hamster wheel in a suit and tie. Rich Dad taught Robert something radically different. Don't work for money. Make money work for you. Instead of earning through effort, earn through leverage. Use systems, not sweat. A business that runs without you. Real estate that pays rent while you sleep. Books, courses, software, anything you create once and sell over and over again. That's real freedom. That's leverage. Here's the brutal truth. You only have 24 hours in a day. If your income depends on your hours, your income is capped. But money doesn't sleep. Your systems, your assets, your investments, they can work 24/7, even on holidays, even while you're on vacation. That's what the rich understand and teach their kids. Not how to be busy, but how to be productive without being present. Robert Kiyosaki learned that lesson working for free. Rich Dad didn't pay him a salary because he didn't want him thinking like an employee. He wanted him thinking like an owner. And when you think like an owner, you stop asking, "How much can I make per hour?" and start asking, "How can I build something that pays me forever?" If you're still working harder hoping to get ahead, you're on the wrong side of the equation. It's not about how hard you work, it's about how hard your money works for you. If it doesn't put money in your pocket, it's not an asset. That's the first real money lesson Robert Kiyosaki ever got from his rich dad, and it shattered everything he thought he knew. Most people grow up believing their house is their biggest asset. Their shiny new car, also an asset. But Rich Dad didn't see it that way. He didn't care how nice it looked or how much it cost. If it took money out of your pocket every month, mortgage, insurance, repairs, gas, taxes, it wasn't building your wealth. It was draining it. This is where most people get trapped. They confuse liabilities for assets. They buy things that feel good but bleed them dry. They finance a luxury car, stretch for a bigger house, swipe the credit card for status. But they never ask the question the rich teach their kids to ask: does this make me money? Rich kids are raised to see money differently. They're taught early on that true assets pay you. They learn to buy things that spit off income, rental properties, stocks with dividends, intellectual property that pays royalties. Instead of buying a brand new iPhone, they ask how they can own part of Apple. Instead of buying liabilities that rust and depreciate, they buy things that grow and cash flow. It's not that the rich don't enjoy nice things, they just let their assets pay for them. They don't work overtime to afford a car. They buy a small rental property, let the tenants pay the mortgage, and drive the car with cash from the monthly profit. That's the game most people never get taught. And it starts with that one rule. If it puts money in your pocket, it's an asset. If it takes money out, it's a liability. If you teach your kids that one distinction and live by it yourself, you've already changed the trajectory of their financial future. Wealth is not a number, it's time. That's what Rich Dad drilled into Robert Kiyosaki at a young age. Most people think wealth means having a big salary, a fancy house, or a nice car. But Rich Dad saw those as illusions, props in a play where the middle class works harder and harder to impress people who aren't even paying attention. True wealth, he said, is measured by one thing: how long can you live without working? That's the definition that changes everything. If your income stops today, how long before you run out of money? A week? A month? Most people, regardless of how much they earn, are one emergency away from chaos. Their lifestyle is dependent on a paycheck, which is dependent on their time, which is already stretched to the limit. That's not wealth. That's a treadmill with a better view. Kids of the rich are taught something entirely different. They're not raised to chase high salaries. They're raised to chase freedom. They learn early that money is not the goal. Time is. And the only way to buy back time is to own income that doesn't require your presence. That means passive income. That means assets. That means systems working while you're not. This is why a millionaire who needs to keep grinding to maintain their lifestyle is poorer than someone with modest expenses and automated cash flow. Because the second one owns their time. They wake up with choices. They're not tied to an alarm clock, a boss, or a cubicle. That's real freedom. That's real wealth. So if you're measuring your success by what you drive or what you earn, you're playing the wrong game. The rich don't measure by stuff. They measure by time. And when you start seeing wealth not as a pile of money but as the ability to live life on your terms, you'll stop chasing paychecks and start building freedom. If you don't understand money terms, you'll always be played. That's not a metaphor, it's a warning. Robert Kiyosaki learned early that money isn't just paper, it's a language. And, like any language, if you don't speak it, someone else will speak it for you, and not in your best interest. This is why the rich teach their kids financial vocabulary from a young age. Words like cash flow, equity, ROI, depreciation, passive income, these aren't fancy finance terms to them. They're basic, everyday tools. Tools that help you see opportunities, make smarter decisions, and most importantly, avoid getting screwed. Because let's be honest, most people don't lose money because they're lazy. They lose it because they're financially illiterate. The poor and middle class are often taught fear when it comes to money. Don't take risks. Don't talk about money. Don't question the system. And so they grow up confused, intimidated, and easy to manipulate. They sign up for credit cards they don't understand, mortgages they can't afford, and student loans they'll be paying for until they die. Not because they're stupid, because they were never taught the language. The rich flip that script. They teach their kids that money isn't scary. It's strategic. They walk through deals with them, explain how leverage works, how assets are taxed differently than earned income, how depreciation can legally reduce your taxes without losing a dime. They teach fluency, because fluency equals freedom. When you understand money, you stop asking permission. You stop living paycheck to paycheck. You stop falling for shiny distractions and start seeing behind the curtain. Confusion breeds dependence. Clarity breeds control. So, if you want to change your life, or your children's, don't just hand them an allowance. Hand them a dictionary, a financial one. Because in a world where money is the most misunderstood language, fluency isn't a luxury, it's survival. The number one skill: can you sell? That's what Rich Dad told Robert, and it wasn't just about making money. It was about building character. Sales isn't just pushing a product. It's communication. It's persuasion. It's confidence under pressure. And it's the difference between surviving and thriving in a world that doesn't reward silence. Rich Dad understood something most parents never teach. The ability to sell is the ability to lead your own life. That's why he didn't give Robert a paycheck. He made him work for free, not as punishment, but as preparation. Without the cushion of a guaranteed income, Robert had to hustle. He had to ask questions, take initiative, face rejection. He had to earn his value. And that process changed everything. Most kids grow up avoiding discomfort. They're told to sit down, be quiet, follow the rules. They're taught that rejection is bad, that failure is shameful, that if someone says no, it means stop. But rich kids, they're taught the opposite. They're told rejection is a muscle. The more you flex it, the stronger you get. They learn to hear no and keep going, to pitch ideas, test offers, and speak up even when it's uncomfortable, because life, at its core, is sales. Selling yourself in an interview, selling your vision to investors, selling a product, a service, a brand, a message. If you can't communicate, you can't compete. And if you can't handle rejection, the world will eat you alive. That's why the rich don't wait until adulthood to teach this. They build it in early. Lemonade stands, cold calls, school projects turned into real business ideas. Not because they want their kids to be salespeople, but because they want them to be free. If you want your child to succeed in a world that rewards courage, don't just tell them to dream big. Teach them to sell it. Rejection is breakfast. Hustle is dessert. The truth about taxes is simple but brutal. The more you work for money, the more you're punished for it. That's the trap most people fall into, and the rich avoid entirely. Robert Kiyosaki's rich dad taught him early on that the tax code is not evil, it's just a set of rules. And those rules were written to reward investors and business owners, not employees. Period. Most people don't know this because they were never taught. Employees earn money, get taxed immediately, and then spend what's left. Business owners and investors, they earn, spend, and then get taxed on what's left over. It's not cheating, it's strategy. It's the system. But if you never learn how the system works, you'll spend your whole life resenting it instead of using it. That's why the rich teach their kids tax strategy from a young age. Words like depreciation, deductions, donations. These aren't for accountants, they're for anyone who wants to keep more of what they earn. Depreciation alone can let a real estate investor show a loss on paper while pocketing actual cash. Charitable donations can lower your tax burden while helping causes you care about. Business expenses, from travel to meals to education, can be deducted legally when tied to your income engine. This is the game the rich play. And they don't hide it. It's all written in the tax code for anyone to see. The problem is, most people are too busy working, too afraid of taxes, or too financially illiterate to realize what's possible. So they overpay, underleverage, and pass down the same fear and confusion to their kids. But it doesn't have to be that way. Teach your kids the truth. Show them that taxes don't have to be the enemy. They can be an advantage. Because once they understand how money is taxed, they'll stop trying to earn more and start focusing on keeping more, and that's when the real wealth begins. Debt isn't the problem. It's how you use it. That one sentence flips the financial world upside down. Most people grow up fearing debt like it's poison. That's what Robert Kiyosaki's poor dad believed. He warned Robert to avoid loans, to pay off everything fast, to live debt-free at all costs. But Rich Dad had a different perspective. He saw debt not as danger, but as a powerful tool, one that, if used wisely, could build empires. The poor and middle class use debt to buy liabilities. Credit cards for clothes, cars, vacations. Things that feel good for a moment and drain their bank accounts for years. That's bad debt. That's how you bury yourself. But the rich, they use debt to buy income. They borrow to acquire real estate that pays rent, to build businesses that produce cash flow, to invest in assets that generate returns. That's good debt. That's how you get rich without using your own money. Most people don't know there's a difference. They're told all debt is dangerous, and so they never learn how to manage it, much less master it. Meanwhile, the wealthy are borrowing millions, tax-free, to expand their portfolios and lower their tax bills. It's not because they're reckless. It's because they understand the rules of the game. That's why teaching kids about debt is essential. Not just don't use credit cards, but how to use credit wisely, how to assess risk, calculate returns, and make money work harder than you do. Because the truth is, there's no wealth without leverage, and there's no leverage without debt. The goal isn't to avoid debt, it's to control it. To be the one steering the wheel, not strapped in the back seat of a financial crash. When you teach kids that debt is just a tool, like a hammer or a saw, you give them power. Used the wrong way, it can wreck everything. But used the right way, it builds something bigger than they ever imagined. A job is not security. It's a trap with benefits. That's one of the hardest pills to swallow, especially if you were raised believing that landing a stable job was the ultimate goal. Robert Kiyosaki learned early that what most people call security is really just a slow-moving trap. A paycheck every 2 weeks, benefits, maybe a retirement plan. It sounds comforting, but the moment that paycheck stops, whether through layoffs, downsizing, or illness, so does your lifestyle. That's not security, that's dependency. Poor Dad believed in the latter. Climb slowly, don't rock the boat, hope for a raise. Rich Dad believed in the elevator. Build something once, ride it up over and over again. He didn't teach Robert how to find a boss. He taught him how to be the boss. Not because it's easier, but because it scales. A job pays you once for your time. A business pays you again and again for the value you create. This is the difference between teaching your kids to survive and teaching them to thrive. When you raise them to only follow instructions, they become replaceable. But when you raise them to solve problems, spot opportunities, and serve others at scale, they become irreplaceable. The marketplace rewards value, not obedience. Most people stay in jobs they hate because they're addicted to the illusion of safety. They fear stepping off the ladder, not realizing there's an elevator right next to it. But that elevator requires courage, creativity, and yes, some failure along the way. That's why the rich prepare their kids for the climb. They normalize entrepreneurship. They encourage experiments. They reward initiative, not just compliance. So if you want to future-proof your kids, don't just teach them how to apply for a job. Teach them how to create value. Show them that real security doesn't come from a salary. It comes from knowing you can build something, solve something, or sell something, anywhere, anytime. You can't pass down what you don't believe you deserve. That's the hidden reason so many families stay stuck in the same financial cycle. It's not just a lack of knowledge, it's a lack of permission. Robert Kiyosaki saw it firsthand. Poor Dad wasn't poor because he lacked intelligence or discipline. He was poor because deep down he believed wealth was something other people deserved. Not him, and he passed that belief on without even knowing it. Many parents unintentionally sabotage their children's financial future by wrapping money in shame. They say things like, "We can't afford that," "Money doesn't grow on trees," or "Rich people are greedy." These phrases stick. They become scripts, and eventually they become ceilings. If you grow up believing that wealth is selfish, that ambition is arrogance, or that financial success makes you less spiritual or less kind, you'll spend your whole life playing small, even when you're capable of so much more. Rich Dad had a different message. Money isn't evil, it's a mirror. It reflects who you are, magnifies your values, and expands your impact. If you're generous, money lets you give more. If you're driven, money lets you build more. But none of that happens if you secretly believe you're not supposed to have it. That's why the rich teach their kids early on that prosperity isn't something you wait for, it's something you claim. They're taught not to apologize for wanting more. They don't see wealth as greed. They see it as freedom, as power to choose, to create, to give. So, if you want to raise a financially confident child, start by healing your own relationship with money, because your beliefs become their blueprint. Give yourself permission to prosper, fully, loudly, unapologetically. Because the moment you do, you give your children that same permission, and that changes everything. Let me leave you with this. Most people will spend their entire lives following a financial script they didn't write, working jobs they don't love, to pay for things they don't need, while wondering why freedom always feels just out of reach. That's the system. That's the trap. And unless you break the cycle, it doesn't stop with you, it gets passed down. But now you know the truth. You've seen behind the curtain, and that changes everything. You don't need to be born rich to think rich. You don't need a finance degree to build wealth. What you need is the mindset, the knowledge, and the courage to take back control of your time, your money, and your future. Robert Kiyosaki didn't just teach about money. He taught how to think like someone who refuses to stay broke. So the next time someone tells you to play it safe, to just get a job, to stop dreaming so big, smile and keep building. Because you're not here to fit in. You're here to break free. If this video lit a fire inside you, drop a comment below. I give myself permission to prosper. When I see your comment, I'll know you're part of the 1% who gets it. I'll give it a heart, and if you haven't already, hit that like button. Subscribe. We're building a community of future millionaires, entrepreneurs, and value creators. People who don't just want more, they're willing to learn more, do more, and be more. Your financial freedom starts now, and the next generation, they'll thank you for it.